Good morning and welcome to Farm Factor. I'm your host, Jamie Bloom. Today, Duane Toews is at the Ellsworth Sorghum School visiting with Dr. J.P. Michaud, a professor in the Department of Entomology at K-State, and Curtis Thompson, KSU Extension Agronomy State Leader. Next, enjoy our weekly Kansas Soybean update. And then we're back with Duane and Dr. Doug Jardine from K-State's Department of Plant Pathology. Then it's the Kansas Farm Bureau legislative update, and we'll end with Matthew Splitter, a sorghum producer from Ellsworth and Rice counties in central Kansas. It's all coming up on Farm Factor. Stay with us.
Closed captioning brought to you by Ag Promo Source. Together we grow. Learn more at agpromosource.com. This segment is brought to you by Kansas Wheat. Learn more at rediscoverwheat.org.
Welcome to Farm Factor. Let's join Duane and Dr. J.P. Michaud as they discuss sugarcane aphids, a newly invasive pest that's still in explosive stages of range expansion.
Duane Toews joining you once again with Ag AM in Kansas. And while the 2016 Sorghum Schools, this particular event held in Ellsworth along with others at Scott City and Emporia, J.P. Michaud joins us on the program. And J.P., sugarcane aphid became a big issue for Kansas growers in some parts of the state last year, something that's likely to be around in a problem for us for a while.
Yes, this is a newly invasive pest that is still in explosive stages of range expansion. Fortunately, it's not one that's going to spend the winter in Kansas, so it's something that we're going to deal with coming up from the south on a yearly basis for a while.
As far as the particular insect, obviously Texas has dealt with it for a number of years now. Are there things that we can learn from what they've dealt with?
Well, our management situation is going to be quite different. This is a problem that began in Texas in 2013. It spread east and it spread north, and right now it's in explosive stages of growth. But at some point, we expect that we will have sustainable biological control of this pest, just like we have of the other aphid pests in sorghum.
We think about why this particular pest is a problem. There's a couple of different issues that it can affect the crop, not only from the time of infection, whether it affects yield, but then also at harvest time as well.
Yes, because it can feed on the crop until very late stages, right up until grain fill. And so that's later than most other aphids. However, we're far enough north that we tend to get some significantly cool temperatures by the time we get to that stage of the crop, and that can help us with the harvest issues. Now down south, they've had a lot of fouling of the grain with the honeydew and then growth of mold in that grain and so forth. And for us, if we have cool enough overnight temperatures, we can tolerate significantly more aphids at that stage of the crop, and so we haven't seen those harvest problems, at least last year.
Fortunately, there are some products out there that we did get some exemption labels for and such to deal with it. But ultimately, it's a pest that very likely, with the right numbers of them, will require some application of an insecticide.
Definitely. And we're still in the process of tailoring these treatment thresholds for different regions. Our thresholds are probably going to be a little higher than they are down south, because down south, the plants get invested much earlier. And of course, they have warmer temperatures. For us, we also have some very good resistant varieties that were developed for green bug that will provide a good degree of protection against this aphid as well.
And we think about the volatility of the particular pest. It all kind of depends on the south wind and how much population in Texas.
That's precisely right, because this aphid will not overwinter much further north than Dallas. And so if we were to get those strong southerly winds established, a pattern of that established earlier in the season than we have in the past 2 years, has been relatively late, then we can look forward to a much more serious problem and a need to treat a much bigger acreage of the crop.
Well, our thanks to J.P. Michaud with K-State joining us at the 2016 Sorghum School talking about sugarcane aphid. Jamie, we'll send it back to you.
Folks, stay with us. Duane will be back with Curtis Thompson, plant pathologist with Kansas State University.
It's time, the Great Bend Farm and Ranch Expo, April 6th, 7th, and 8th in Great Bend, Kansas. Horse training demos and Expo 3 all 3 days. Ebert Ranch Shoot AI demonstrations will be April the 7th at 1 p.m. K-State speakers all 3 days. Over 700 vendors, 80 acres of exhibits. That's April 6th, 7th, and 8th. Corporate sponsors American Hat Company, Great Bend Co-op. Go to starexpos.net for more information.
Buying a car shouldn't be this hard. And at Brown Chevrolet Buick in Wamego, it isn't. It's actually awesome. Whether you want a new or used car or truck, Toby's team can make the deal. Even if you want to custom order a new car or truck, Toby's team can make the deal. See Toby's team at Brown Chevrolet Buick in Wamego. We're awesome.
Watch Ag AM in Kansas online at agaminkansas.com. Ag AM in Kansas brought to you in part by Kansas Corn. Learn more at kscorn.com.
We're back. Let's join Duane and Curtis as they talk about weed issues in sorghum.
Duane Toews joining you once again with Ag AM in Kansas while at the 2016 Sorghum Schools held across the state. A chance to catch up with Curtis Thompson with Kansas State University in the Agronomy Department. And Curtis, you spoke with producers about some of the weed issues in sorghum, and it's been an issue for a number of years, complicated by some of the latest issues we've had with some of the tolerance of some of the herbicides that we've used in the past.
Always a pleasure to be with you, and that is exactly right. We started out just briefly talking about annual grasses, which have always been a problem in sorghum. That hasn't changed. But yeah, because of our management strategies in the past, we have seen more and more resistances in some of the weed species we're dealing with. We spent a lot of time today focusing on Palmer amaranth and pigweeds in general, which are a serious, widespread problem across the state of Kansas. We have an increasing level of glyphosate resistance. Not that glyphosate is used in sorghum, but we definitely use glyphosate in terms of burn down or as a substitute for tillage. It really did complicate the issue in general of controlling Palmer amaranth in not only sorghum but all of our crops.
We think about one of the big issues that some folks would say we got a little bit lazy maybe in our management techniques, looking at a good solid pre-program to prevent weeds from getting started may be one of the best tools that we have.
Well, I think that's exactly it. Previously, we've had herbicides like glyphosate that were so effective, a couple of post applications, and regardless of the size of the weed, and we were able to walk away with a clean field. In sorghum, we've always needed to be spraying these weeds small. That hasn't changed, but we also are absolutely essential that we put a pre-emergence herbicide down to at least give us a chance to manage these pigweeds in our sorghum crop. And that was really the emphasis today, talking about effective pre-emergence products and maybe some of the strategies that the sorghum growers could utilize to keep pigweed from coming out of the ground, and in fact, if it does come up, to be sure to get those post-emergence herbicides applied in a very timely manner.
Really evaluating the mode of action and trying to get multiple modes or sites that attack those particular weeds maybe is another thing that we look at as we go down the road.
Well, one of our management strategies has been to use herbicides with multiple modes of action that all have activity on the pigweed species, and companies have obliged our needs and requests by providing, chemistries that have 2 and sometimes 3 different modes of action. And in a lot of cases, you may spend a few more dollars, but in the end, may provide you a better level of weed control.
Our thanks to Curtis Thompson joining us at the 2016 Sorghum Schools here in Kansas. Jamie, we'll send it back to you for more Ag AM in Kansas.
Thanks, Duane. Next up is this week's Kansas Soybean Update.
Kansas Farm Bureau, the voice of agriculture, represents grassroots agriculture. The state's largest and most powerful farm organization stands up for its members through leadership development, agriculture education, legal defense, environmental advocacy, farm safety, and risk management. Members also enjoy money-saving benefits. To join our organization today or to learn more, go to www.kfb.org or find us on Facebook and Twitter.
Welcome back to Farm Factor and the Kansas Soybean Update.
This is the Kansas Soybean Update. It's brought to you by the Kansas Soybean Commission. The Soybean Checkoff, progress powered by Kansas farmers. Matthew Atkinson, who is a producer from Columbus, Kansas, is joining us. And Matthew, congratulations. You were a part of the DuPont Young Leaders Program through the American Soybean Association.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
What does this Young Leaders Program do?
Well, it gets people involved from the farm community, and it teaches them how to go out and talk to people that maybe don't know so much about ag and ways to educate them in the way ag works nowadays. And it's just it promotes agriculture on a national basis more than just in your local communities, but that as well.
What were some of the key things that you learned during the time being a part of the DuPont Young Leaders Program?
A lot of the legislation going on, ways to communicate back to people, how to take someone from the other side of the aisle and explain what we're doing so we don't look so much the bad guy, and just to broaden people's horizons.
You know, another great thing about that is you get to meet producers from all across the nation who are part of this program as well.
Yes, we did. Everywhere from Missouri down to Louisiana, up to Delaware. It was great to see their ways of doing ag and comparing it to ours, and the different challenges we all face as a community of farmers.
Maybe different operating practices, but somewhat the same problems endured by producers across the nation?
Yes, absolutely.
If there's a grower out there or that's interested and maybe wanting to be a part of this, why should they apply to be a part of the DuPont Young Leaders Program?
It's a way to really open your eyes to some of the bigger problems we face. It's so easy on the farm to you have your challenges and get so wrapped up in that. This kind of expands that, and it also makes you feel like you're not the only ones at some points.
Do you feel like this is going to be important in what you do in the future? And like you said, you're a part of the board, or being a part of the board there in Kansas Soybeans.
Yeah, absolutely. Like one thing they asked us to do is use social media and ways to communicate back to social media, so people get that feeling of the family farm again, and not so much. It is an industry, but it's a lot of family involvement too.
All right, sounds good. Matthew, I appreciate you joining us, and congratulations once again on being a part of the program.
All right, thank you very much.
That is Matthew Atkinson, a producer from Columbus, Kansas. He was also a participant in the ASA DuPont Young Leaders Program. He's been our guest on the Kansas Soybean Update. It's brought to you by the Kansas Soybean Commission. The Soybean Checkoff, progress powered by Kansas farmers. Learn more at kansassoybeans.org. For Kansas Soybeans, I'm Greg Akagi.
Hope you enjoyed this week's Kansas Soybean Update. After the break, we'll join Duane and Dr. Doug Jardine.
I will take action against herbicide-resistant weeds. I will know my weeds, and I will stop them before they go to seed. I will do whatever it takes to give my crops the upper hand, and I will use multiple herbicide sites of action, because every action counts. I will take action, this time for all time.
This segment brought to you by Heinen Brothers Ag. Farmers helping farmers by offering quality aerial and ground application, fertilizer, ag chemicals, and anhydrous ammonia. Call today to protect your crop yield.
Thanks for staying with us. Let's see what Dr. Jardine has to say about diseases found in sorghum, specifically Fusarium and charcoal rot.
Duane Toews joining you once again with Ag AM in Kansas. And while the 2016 sorghum schools were going on across the state, a chance to catch up with plant pathologist at Kansas State University, Doug Jardine. And Doug, when we think about sorghum crops, not always the most glamorous as far as diseases are concerned, but there's some old school diseases that continue to plague that particular crop.
Well, that's right, Duane. And we covered a lot of different diseases today, but in grain sorghum in Kansas, most of our problems come either at the very beginning of the year or at the very end of the year. So in the first part of the talk, we talked a little bit about the seedling blights that are out there. There are no magic bullets for the growers to try and control those. Our sorghum seed comes treated with a fungicide, and for the most part, it does a pretty good job. But in certain years, especially if we get a lot of rainy, cold weather, within a week or two after planting, those products just don't keep up, and then they can have some problems. So we talked a little bit about that and the conditions that are brought on. Kind of in the middle of the talk, we covered a lot of areas of things that maybe are just occasionally seen, so they may be curious about them, but in the big picture of things, they really don't cause any yield loss. And then the thing that we really hit hard was the stalk rots, and especially in 2015, there were many places in the state, especially in the north central and northwest area of the state, where we had significant lodging in many fields. I personally saw fields that had lodging that were several acres in size, and I mean, they were just absolutely flat on the ground. And of course, that becomes a harvest nightmare for the growers, even if the yield's there. If they want to try and pick it up, they have to drive real slow, and time is money for them. And so we talked about the conditions that can bring on stalk rot. In Kansas, we have two, one called fusarium and one called charcoal rot. Fusarium likes a little cooler, wetter weather. Charcoal rot likes hotter and drier. In 2015, pretty much everything we saw out there was fusarium stalk rot. And so there's things they can do, controlling insects, because the loss of leaf area can increase stalk rot. There are some fertility things. We know adding chloride, if it's needed to a field, can increase the standability. And then we talked about genetic resistance, and we used some current field data where they had significant amount of lodging in some of the hybrids and zero in others, and talked about how they can use information, for instance, in the Kansas State Sorghum Performance Test to help them make those final selections on hybrids.
Obviously, when you see those lodging issues, it becomes very apparent what your yield loss is. You and I have talked before that healthy plants are the most productive plants, and sometimes our disease issues tend to be kind of that silent yield robber.
Well, that's right. One of the things we talked about with growers is that you can, in fact, have stalk rot without lodging. Lodging is the most severe case of stalk rot, and in some of our later planted sorghum this year, it got iced on and it had big winds, and that caused a lot of lodging. But just the decay of that lower stalk, it reduces the flow of nutrients and water up to the head as it's developing, and you end up with smaller heads with smaller seeds, and maybe 5 or 10% yield loss with no lodging at all out in the field.
Well, our thanks to Doug Jardine for joining us here at KFRM and Ag AM in Kansas with the 2016 sorghum schools. Jamie, we'll send it back to you.
Thanks, Duane. Folks, come back after the break for the Kansas Farm Bureau Legislative Update.
Soil is the life of a farm, and for 25 years, Sure Crop Liquid Crop Nutrition has helped growers produce abundant quality crops while preserving and improving the soils they steward. Sure Crop offers complete soil and plant analysis with cropping recommendations, delivery direct to your on-farm storage, and quality crop nutrition custom blended for your field. Choose Sure Crop for the assurance of excellence for your soil. Call today or visit their website for more information.
Next time you see a beautiful field of corn, reach out and thank the farmers who work tirelessly to raise corn for livestock feed, renewable fuels, and exports to feed a growing world population. The farmers on the Kansas Corn Commission work for Kansas Corn with grower-funded checkoff dollars that support foreign and domestic market development, research, promotion, and education to expand opportunities for Kansas farmers. To learn more, visit kscorn.com.
Welcome back to Farm Factor and the Kansas Farm Bureau Legislative Update.
The Leeds trip is changed from what used to be our President's trip to Leaders Engaged in Acting in D.C. And the purpose is to expose our county leadership to D.C. on Sunday, the first day, we did have a tour that went up to Indianapolis and to see the Naval Academy and an Old English town. The other focal points, though, I think, were the orientation that we had from American Farm Bureau staff, and then the opportunity that our group got to see all of our Kansas delegation one-on-one. And it was particularly of interest this time with the labeling bill being the issue of focus and the role that Senator Roberts was playing in that, and the opportunity to hear from him and the push that he was having to hopefully prevail, which they did not, but his work towards that bill. I think it's just important that we do take the opportunity to have our county people go and see how their government works and how their organization functions at that level.
Hope you enjoyed this week's Kansas Farm Bureau Legislative Update. After the break, we'll join Duane as he visits with Matthew Splitter, a sorghum producer from Central Kansas.
I'm a patient of Kansas Regenerative Medicine in Manhattan. I had stem cell therapy in my hips and my left knee. My wife and I both are patients. We went down there the same day in November. Since then, my hips are feeling a lot better. I can work now most of the day if I want to. And before, if I worked in the morning, I was done in the afternoon, or if I worked in the afternoon, I was sure enough done for the rest of the day.
This segment brought to you by Kansas Farm Bureau, the voice of agriculture. To join today or for more information, go to kfb.org or find us on Facebook and Twitter.
We're back with Duane and Matthew Splitter, a sorghum producer from Ellsworth and Rice counties.
Duane Toews joining you once again with Ag AM in Kansas, and during the 2016 sorghum schools held across the state, chance to catch up with Matthew Splitter from Central Kansas here, a sorghum producer. And Matthew, tell us a little bit about your operation and how you've utilized sorghum in your crop mix.
We farm in Ellsworth and Rice counties here in Central Kansas, and sorghum is a very important part of our operation. It's a great rotational crop. It's a good yielding crop for us. It kind of takes the place for corn in our neck of the woods. It takes a lot less moisture to grow, of course, and it is a very profitable crop for our operation as well.
As far as last year, we had a tremendous number of sorghum acres in the state of Kansas, and the yield was awfully good as well. We were blessed with weather that helped us out in that regard. How do you see things playing out? Obviously, price isn't what it was a year ago, but the yield plus the price still made things pretty reasonable for guys.
Yeah, the yield was tremendous. We just had an exceptional year for sorghum yields. Of course, the price just isn't there like it was maybe 12 months ago, but the yield more than compensated for the price drop. Being such a rotational crop, it's very hard to switch away from it just to try to take advantage of a market or try to take advantage of moisture, anything like that. But the last year was just a great year to be a sorghum farmer on the yield side for sure. Of course, it presents its whole host of problems when you're starting to deal with maybe some diseases, sugarcane aphids, resistance of pigweeds, and other weed pressure like that. But all of that is with good management can be overcome for sure and produce a good crop year after year.
Matthew, you had an opportunity to participate in a national program called Leadership Sorghum, and there's another class that they're calling for. I believe through the end of April, individuals have opportunity to nominate for that. Tell us a little bit about your experience with that class.
Yeah, I had the opportunity to be in the inaugural class of Leadership Sorghum. It was Class 1. There's quite a number of producers from Kansas, but as well as across, I believe in our class there's 8 states represented. We got to see parts of the industry that just the normal producer doesn't get to see. Everything from seed production to policy to exports to domestic use, end users. It was just a tremendous opportunity as a young producer to explore just all the sides of the industry. It made me grow as an individual, as a husband, as a father, and as a board member for organizations here in Central Kansas for sure.
Our thanks to Matthew Splitter joining us here from the 2016 sorghum schools held in Kansas. Again, if you're interested in Leadership Sorghum, I would encourage you to contact the Kansas Grain Sorghum Commission or Kansas Grain Sorghum Producers Association for more information about that class. Jamie, we'll send it back to you.
Thanks for joining us. I'm your host, Jamie Bloom, and I hope you enjoyed today's show. See you next week on Farm Factor. We're here every Tuesday on Ag AM in Kansas.
Closed captioning brought to you by Ag Promo Source. Together we grow. Learn more at agpromosource.com.